From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos bi-week podcast, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name's Ben Grant. He's JB. We are your hosts for this bi-week special. And all of our stuff you can find on xsandargos.com. JB's got his report card there, which I always enjoy. Reeve Batstone, one of our contributors, just put out a piece on the Argonauts chemistry, which is a must read. And all of our stuff comes to you without subscription, without any charge. All we ask from you is that you support our sponsors, and Something in the Water Brewing is our title sponsor for this season. I've got a Pancake Bay Sweet Brunch Stout on the go here in my nice skull helmet mug. And next time, JB, I think next time we record, I believe cans of Longboat will be available. I know X's and Argos listeners have been enjoying Longboat off the tap from Something in the Water, located down in Liberty Village. And shortly that is going to be available in cans too. So I believe next week, by the time we're recording, maybe we will have each have a can of Longboat to enjoy while we record our podcast. But yeah, make sure you check out Something in the Water Brewing in Liberty Village, our title sponsor for the 2023 season. JB, we've got a huge podcast today. We've got to talk about the disrespect that the Argos seem to be getting. I know Argos fans are enraged about it. We'll get into that. I want to talk about Coach Mace and some of the brilliant things he's been doing and why Toronto Argonauts fans may not be able to enjoy that for very long. We'll talk about the PFF rankings that came out for this week, plus the next stretch that the Argos go on and what the schedule looks like over the next few weeks. We've got quarterback rankings. We've got power rankings that we're bringing out, plus Put Me Down for 20, CFL Picks. And we've got a fantasy grudge match this week. We don't talk about fantasy a lot, but we're taking on the guys from Argos Fancast. So we got to come up with a little bit of strategy, at least here, JB. All that more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. All right, let's get into things, JB. The Argos beat the formerly number one ranked BC Lions pretty handily, 21 points. Argos fans are upset about the fact that people seem to be, much like last year's Grey Cup win, where people were saying, well, it wasn't so much the Argos, the Bombers just blew it. People are saying this week, it wasn't so much the Argos, just the Lions kind of gave it to them. Where do you stand on that narrative?
No, I mean, yeah, BC was down a couple of people, but the Argos outplayed BC. They were the home team. They had that advantage. BC had to come across the country. These are all things that teams have to deal with. You don't get to play teams at optimal performance at home all the time. That's not how the league works. So I think anybody who thinks that BC gave the game to Toronto doesn't watch football.
And I think it's not like the Argos were healthy coming in. Like the Argos were dealing with their third string middle linebacker.
Right, exactly. Like everybody.
Their left
Argos were
missing.
at home. That's definitely an advantage. But they outplayed British Columbia. They dominated them on specials, which is not usually a forte of theirs. They turned their Cinderella back into a pumpkin. And they sent them on their merry way with a dominant win. There's no two ways about it. Like, does this mean Toronto's going to win the Grey Cup? No. But does it mean Toronto is the best team in the league right now? Of course it does.
Yeah, I really don't think you can argue that. And I don't think... I think you can look at it and say, well, yeah, BC just didn't play their normal kind of football, but it takes, there's another team involved in that, right? Like, it's not in a
many
vacuum.
times had players say, oh, we didn't play that well. No, they're good. That's why you didn't play well. That's what happens when you play a team that's better than you. You play worse than you normally do. They force you to play not well. I hate when people say that.
But it said it a lot, and I know it's all over social media. Yeah. I've got so many messages, DMs, and mentions where people are like, "How come everyone thinks this had nothing to do with the Argos?" And yeah, I get that frustration.
It's like a boxing match. You can't be like, "Well, normally I box much better." Because the guy you boxed was bigger and stronger. That's why you lost. It's not complicated.
Now, but would you take, suppose this were a doubleheader, and this is super hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Suppose Toronto was playing in BC this week. Would you take the Argos or would you take the Lions?
Well, back to back.
Well, okay, in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, look, I think that's tough. Like, I think beating a team twice, beating a good team twice is not easy to do. I think you're always looking to split against a good team. So I would probably lean BC at home. I think traveling across the country is not easy for players to do. It has a toll. I think BC probably has will have a different game plan in terms of adjusting to what Toronto was doing. That's just the nature of football. I don't think this was the defining win, and now we're better than BC. But Toronto was better than BC on this day, and you move forward. But yeah, I think BC is still a good football team. That's why the win, I think, is so important, because I thought they took a pretty good punch from a pretty good team. And and they got the win at home, which is what you're aiming to do against good teams.
And I would agree with you. I think BC probably would win in Vancouver, but I think Toronto wins in a neutral site. I think they are a better football team right now. I think they're playing better on offense and defense, more consistently. They're not more explosive on offense, but they're more consistent on offense than they won't find ways, or haven't at least yet found ways to lose games. Yeah. And the defense is great. Best defense in the league, probably.
Toronto's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that that they are what they are is what we talked about in the offseason, is they are very, very hard to figure out, because they have so much talent at so many positions, and they have a number of people that can play different roles. And when you have a defensive coordinator who is talented enough to cook up what he has there, not just kind of go with the standard defense, you put those two things together, and they're a nightmare to prepare for, because you've got a secondary that is fast and physical and has 3 or 4 ball hawks. You got a defensive line that'll eat you. You've got, we don't even have Mwamba in the mix, but you've got linebackers who are a problem when it comes to blitzing. I do not envy teams going at Toronto, because Toronto's defense to this point has been incredibly variable. And to be honest, right now in the league, Toronto's basically the only team in the league that has a running game worth a damn. So if teams can't pound the ball against Toronto and they have to throw it, that's going to be a big problem for them.
That's a beautiful segue into our next segment, Coach Mace. Coach Mace, the defensive coordinator for the Toronto Argonauts, is just a gem. And someone that I think Argos fans really need to enjoy this season, because unfortunately, as with all great coordinators, they don't stick around for that long, because they inevitably become a head coach. And I know, like, Farhan Lalji was tweeting, I think I retweeted something of mine or commented on something of mine and said that Coach Mace was like this close to getting the head coaching job in Ottawa last year, like before the season started. And you see the stuff that Mace has done through 3 games this season. It's a guarantee that Coach Mace is going to be, as long as there's a vacancy, and there will be, there always are. If there's a vacant head coaching position next year in the CFL, Coach Mace has got to be number 1 on everybody's list to fill that. And it's not just the X's and O's stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about that and why he's so good, but it's personality too. Everybody I've talked to loves him, and the players love playing for him. You can see that. You can see that at practice. You can see that in games. Watch the players when they get I'm sure this isn't the analogy that he wants, but like when the players get back to the sideline after a great defensive series or after a pick, and they go up and they're high-fiving with Coach Mace and Coach Bell, it's like they're so proud to show Dad what they did. It feels like that. It feels like that. He's not old enough to fill that role probably yet, but that's sort of what it looks like to me, is like, look, Dad, look what I did. Weren't you so impressed with what I did it there? They can't wait to play for him and to go to war for him, and so he's going to make a fantastic head coach. So we kind of come to terms with it right now. Argos fans, he's gone next year. He's going to be head coaching, and you're going to have to play against him next year. But let's enjoy this year and see what he does out there, because he's the best. He looks so good as a DC.
I know. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be Hamilton.
Oh God.
Which is just beyond disappointing. But I agree with you. He is going to be a fantastic head coach. Guy, I mean, I'm sure the players respond to somebody who uses their skills. Is not, coming in with the set system and you have to adapt to it and you have to change to it. When he has red paint, he paints the barn red. He's hooking up defenses based on the skill set of the guys he has. And I'm sure the guys love it because he puts them in positions to be successful, and he takes advantage of their ability to learn complex defenses that make sense for their skill set, not just complexity for the sake of complexity.
There was a play in the game this week where you really saw some of the elements that make Coach Mace stand out. And it is having, it's like you're saying too, it is having the players. You can't just go out and do the stuff he's doing with a bunch of new guys. So having that continuity, obviously it helps. He's got his, he's working with Fields and Bell again, and he's got the same pieces largely in place. But yeah, one interception in particular, I was looking at carefully. I wrote a piece for 3 Down Nation, which I'd love for you to check out. I was breaking down Vernon Adams' 6 interceptions and looking at why and sort of whose fault it was. And sometimes it was on Vernon, and sometimes it was on other parts of the Lions offense. And sometimes it's just stuff that's so hard to read that you don't see, especially when there's traffic in your face and guys are coming from all over the place. So on this one particular play, I think it was the first interception of the game, Robertson Daniel picks it off. Argos are showing what looks like cover 1 pre-snap. You got Royce Mechie as sort of the one high. And but what is already drawing your attention as a quarterback and certainly as the offensive line is that guys aren't where they're supposed to be. You've got Wyndham McManus lined up as a defensive end. And so you're kind of looking over there thinking, okay, something's happening. And then Flo Remilade, who would normally be over there, he's actually dancing right now in front of Michael Couture, the center. And he's dancing back and forth. He's not in a 3-point. He's just kind of dancing around. You're like, is he dropping? Is he coming? If he is, through which gap? And he ends up engaging Couture on the snap. Well, sort of engaging is misleading because nobody touched him. But he forces Couture to commit to him, which then leaves Oakman one-on-one with Chung. And that is a matchup that Oakland's going to win pretty much every time. And so that alone is enough to create problems. And Oromolade gets by Couture completely untouched, and he's right in Vernon Adams' face. You've got Oakman, who's pushed Chung right back into Vernon Adams' face. And while that's going on, Adams actually was able to diagnose part of the coverage. It wasn't cover 1. They were disguising it, which they do so well. And JB, maybe you can talk about that in a second. They had shifted and they had kind of rolled into a cover 2. And the sneakiest part of it is that it actually wasn't cover 2. It's what we call Tampa 2. Typically, the middle linebacker is the one that drops back in Tampa 2. And while you've got these sort of 2 deep safeties usually covering halves of the field, that middle linebacker drops back and takes away the underneath hole. Here it was actually the boundary halfback, Robertson Daniel, who very quietly crept over into that underneath hole. And Adams saw the cover 2, was looking for Rhymes on the post, did not see Daniel drift back, because to him, the middle linebacker on that play, as you would read it, would be Oromolade. But brilliant scheme. And I don't blame Adams for throwing that pick. He had so much stuff going wrong in that. I don't know what you do. Like, how do you handle a play like that? But what do you do as the quarterback when that's what's going on? You're having guys pushed into your lap, guys getting by untouched, and they're disguising the coverage so well that you don't have time to read it.
Yeah, you have to be 2-dimensional. You have to be able to run the ball. If you are, and so that's why Toronto has really been so successful, is they are absolutely built to have the lead. And when they have the lead and you have to go to passing, their pass rush, their defensive secondary is ready to pounce on all of that stuff. I think, in all honesty, I think the only way you're going to be able to handle Toronto is either A, get out to a big lead, which is not easy to do against that defense, but I think more likely you have to be able to do both. You have to make them respect the run, and you have to make them commit people to the run, which will then reduce the creativity of coach in terms of game plan, because you have to have a few more people in the box. I don't see any other way to do it, because they are just too good and too smart, and they're only getting better. I mean, what could you study on film? There's nothing you can study on film that's going to help you when you're the quarterback out there and you're seeing ghosts. Film study is not going to help that.
Can we talk about the disguising that Toronto is doing, just how well their players are disguising coverage? I don't even know who the best guy is. I know like Robertson Daniel's great at it. Pickett is really good at it as well. McFadden impressed me this week. That pick that he had, he couldn't have sold man coverage more. He was impressed man right up until the snap, and he ended up in deep third and picked the ball off because Adams didn't see it. But he's giving there's no hint. There's no hint anywhere. He's staring right at the receiver. His body is facing entirely towards the receiver. He's got inside shade, and he's locked in on his receiver, and yet his responsibility is like 20 yards backwards. And all these guys are contributing to it, but it's not just the guy with the assignment that's contributing. It's other guys too that are drawing attention. So like Pickett, when he knows Robertson Daniel is going to be coming late on a halfback blitz, he'll often on the opposite side of the field draw attention by mugging or creeping in at the last second only to bail out. And so it's just a whole team thing. Like right now with those veterans in that defensive room.
Yeah, it's the sweet spot that any coach could dream of, which is when you have talent and talent that buys into your scheme. And a lot of times, you have none of the above. Sometimes you have one of the above. On those rare occasions where you have talent that 100% buys into your scheme, I mean, that's when magic can happen, because those guys are flying around the field with the coach's eyes and a player's ability. And when you get that, it's fantastic. So, I mean, that's where they are. And those guys are all buying in. And I don't think in small part it's you can underestimate the impact of Daniel or Pickett in that dressing room in terms of leading the way.
Let's get into PFF grades for this week. I've loved having access to some of this PFF stuff this year. I've long been a PFF fan. We've talked, you and I talked about this last week on the pod. We don't agree with everything they do, and we don't agree with all the grading, and I think that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, it's an intelligent football call on stuff, and I think it's at least worth looking at. And so these things coming out week to week, they don't generally surprise us. So you've got some really good Argos numbers this week. Chad Kelly as the top-rated quarterback for the week with a grade of 83.7, and the next nearest guy is 64.5. So it's a huge week, obviously, for Chad Kelly. Top-graded linebacker was Wynton McManus, which he played just a really solid game. I didn't notice him as much because, again, he's playing within a unit, but he had a lot more demands than I realized when we were initially watching the game. When we were sort of watching it, the Argos move around so much, it's hard to actually tell what each person's base responsibilities are, because as we talked about in that last segment, Mace uses them so liberally. But Mace was back and forth between playing Mac, between playing Will. They lined him up as a defensive end sometimes. And yeah, he played solid football wherever they put him. And so 76.8 was his grade. And the next closest guy was 71.5. So yeah, he was well out in front. And then, of course, the defensive back of the week, how could it not be Robertson Daniel? And that's in amongst a bunch of guys that had really good games in the secondary. Robertson Daniel had a grade of 89.2, which is a huge grade by PFF standards. 3 picks and a pick six will do that. But yeah, Douglas Coleman from Ottawa was right on his heels, 88.3. There were a couple guys in the 80s with him. So, but yeah, huge game from those guys. Couple honorable mentions. Pickett was in there. Cam Phillips was in there for their categories too. But yeah, huge game from all those guys. What do you think about Wynton McManus and the flexibility that he showed last week, moving all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed in the game before that he seems to be all the way back. and confident in his body to fly around. And he was the best defensive player in the league last year. And sometimes we can all have short memories. But when he is at his best, I love it because, he's kind of filling in for Mwamba a little bit too. So he kind of solidifies that middle of the field and lets things cook other places because that nothing is going to go that wrong in the middle of the field. I'm really excited to see what they do. If we can get everybody healthy and you can get Mwamba rolled back into that mix.
Yeah, I don't even know, but I wouldn't put anything past Coach Mace because we've seen packages where you got 7 DBs on the field, for example. Like we've seen him use this. Like if you want to get a play out of this guy, send him in for one play. Let's take a look at a 7 DB play. What would you rule out some sort of package where you've got McManus? Like imagine this on, let's say it's a 2nd and 13 play, and you decide to take out. Let's say you put out just Oakman and Hendricks as D linemen, and you send out Williams and Jones, McManus, Mwamba, Pickett, and you kind of have them all swarming around the defensive line. Like that stuff I'm really excited about seeing is because we're impressed with the creativity now. Yeah, wait until you've got a healthy room of linebackers, then we'll see what's what. That'll be pretty awesome. So the stretch. This is a massive stretch of games, JB. First of all, the Argos, they're 3-0. They needed to be 3-0. And first of all, before we even get to that, I didn't realize until I heard it on the broadcast, I think it was Marshall Ferguson that said it on the broadcast, that this is the first time the Argos have been 3-0 since the 1991 season. Was that, which is amazing to me. Like it's not like we're talking 8-0, we're talking 3-0. It's pretty unbelievable that the Argos have not started 3-0 since then, but they needed to because this schedule is, as you mentioned, the first day the schedule came out, it is back heavy. There are problems later in the schedule. It starts out super light, 2 bye weeks within the first 5 weeks. That's great in terms of being rested, but this next stretch is crucial. They go from, they're back week 6, and they go all the way through week 10, which, isn't actually that long. You got five games. And then it's their last bye of the year. And it's only like August 14th. And now you've got to go run the gauntlet in the fall against tough teams, playing in tough places, like out in Winnipeg, for example. And you've got no more buys left, and you've got all the way through to the playoffs on that. So
yeah, like there's 2 big, like July is tough and September is really tough. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. They're basically on the month for a road for no discernible reason. Nobody seems to have an answer for why they're on the road for a month. Usually some kind of construction or significant reason would be given for why a team goes on the road for a month, but they are. So.
And you think it would be TFC, but they're not home either.
No, I don't know. I don't know whether they're planning on doing renovations for the World Cup, but there's basically nobody at BMO until the end of August.
So let's talk about this 5-game stretch, JB, and what the Argos need to do in that 5 games. So next game is at Montreal. That's next Friday night, July 14th. Then at Hamilton. They go to Halifax to play Saskatchewan. Then they go to Calgary to play the Stampeders. And then they finally return home to play the Red Blacks before going on the bye. So those are the 5 games: at Montreal, at Hamilton, in Halifax against the Rough Riders, at Calgary.
Little spoiler for coming later, I think Ottawa is going to be a problem.
Yeah, they may be. They may be a problem once they start getting things
where
sorted.
That used to be kind of like, I come back and you have the Red Blacks. Yeah, like that. That's a lot. That's yeah. I mean, I think if you go 3-2, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like 3-2 is a win in this stretch, and it doesn't sound great after a 3-0 start. Yeah, but I think that's great. I think you go 2-3, and you're going to be into problems in that fall. It's going to force you to have to go on a run when other teams are coming off buys and you're not. And that's the trick with the fall stretch, is that it seems like everyone's coming off a bye, or you've got back-to-back here, or teams with more rest days. So this stretch really has to be 3-2. If you go 3-2, I think the Argos are in a pretty good place going into their final stretch of the season.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's get into our QB rankings. And you and I haven't discussed these yet. We've each made our own quarterback rankings. I'm excited to see what you've come up with because, and just like, again, for listeners, a little peek behind the curtain at, the long history of making lists and making bets against each other that JB and I have. So, we do things like JB and I have had like an Oscar pool going way back. And anytime something's very obvious, I usually take the obvious choice. Like, I'll say, well, I think King's Speech is going to win Best Picture. And JB's like, no, Winter's Bone, Michael McDonough's cinematography is so good. And of course, nobody is going to vote for that. And King's Speech ends up winning. So with that in mind, I can't wait to see whose backup quarterback you have as the number one ranked quarterback.
Well, I certainly almost put somebody very high up the list who has not played this season.
All right. Well, I'm all here for that. So
I don't know whether that speaks to him or it speaks to the dearth of quarterback talent in the league, but we'll see.
So let's do it. Let's do our quarterbacks. We'll go chronologically we'll do our top 10 here and see how we go. So number one quarterback in the league. I'm going to start it off first. I think Zach Collaros is your number one quarterback in the league. His stats tell you he's number two right now. But I think he's played the best football and is capable of playing the best football going forward. I think even in his one bad game, quarterbacks will have that sometimes. I was against the BC Lions. I trust him to perform and bounce back. So
yeah,
he's number one.
Yeah, same with the Claris. He has the championship. You always have to, as a tiebreaker, you have to give him the edge because he's won championships. His touchdown interception rate is fantastic. He is second in the league points offensively and offensive touchdowns. He is second in passing touchdowns. He's leading a juggernaut. To me, he is the best quarterback simply because of his history. Because I could make an argument, and almost did, that Chad Kelly is playing better than he is right now, but I will give the nod to the old man at West.
Yes, it's like stats wise. And if you wanted to see, I know stats that's a whole different topic that we've talked about here and there. But if you want to look at quarterback stats, I compiled them myself and put them on Twitter. If you want to check out my Twitter at Ben_Grant. And you scroll down a little bit, you'll find where I posted quarterback stats. And I've got efficiency rating in there too. And I feel pretty good about all these numbers. But Collaros, in terms of efficiency, is second. You've got Fajardo at the top, 109.56. And Collaros is just behind him, 109.25. And then Chad Kelly's in third, 97.14. I think Chad Kelly's had some favorable situations which have helped him. Like having the lead almost always is going to help your quarterback rating. So
yeah, I'm not as much on the pass efficiency. I'm more about for me. I'm looking for touchdowns. Like that's what the quarterback's there to do. Quarterback is there to lead the offense to touchdowns. Everything else is noise.
Yeah, and I can't criticize that. And I didn't go just with like straight quarterback efficiency for my list either. But
no.
But it's
well, we agree on number one. I think that's
we do. I know that may be where
and
our
I will
roads
tell you in
divide.
defense of a later pick. There is a certain quarterback who has not played this year, whose last 4 games in the CFL are identical to Collaros' first 4 games this season.
All right, well, let's get to that. So, number 2, who do you have at number 2?
Number 2, I have Chad Kelly.
All right, nice.
He is, that he has been, so you look at the stats, it's a little tricky because he's only played 3 and BC's played 4. So sometimes it's a little apple and orange when you're comparing it, but he is he's done fantastically well with the off. Now I know the knock is he only has 2 passing touchdowns, but I can't put only passing touchdowns on the quarterback just because your quarterback is not throwing well doesn't mean you have a good running game. That a running touchdown can come from a team respecting the quarterback. So he has 11 touchdowns on the offense. They're 6.87 yards per play. just first. They're second in net offense. They're second in average gain. He's right at the top for pass efficiency. The only knock against him is his pass touchdowns. But everything else is fantastic. His numbers are really good. His touchdown interception rate is really good. It's really just that they've had so much success in the red zone with Ouellette that they haven't had to have Kelly throw. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I think they've just found somebody who's able to get that done. And I think Kelly, Kelly's ability to run is one of the reasons why Ouellette has been so successful. So I have him at 2.
And don't forget too, like Chad Kelly does have 2 passing touchdowns, but that could easily be like 5 or 6. So remember, like their rushing touchdowns are coming from inside the 5. Well, how did they get inside the 5?
Totally,
right?
Because he drove right. Like he again statistically is really good at his drives. Like in terms of leading touchdown drives, he is. Let's see if he's here 1 or 2, but it stands out that the offensive touchdowns are coming because Chad Kelly is their quarterback.
And he had, Gittins down at like the 1. He had Phillips down at the 1 in the last couple games.
100%. So. I think every other statistic stands out against having Adams or whoever else might be considered 3.
So we are the same through 1 and 2, which is surprising. I thought we would already have differences. I wonder if our third quarterback is the same.
I'm happy that you seem to have done a little research here, which is nice to see.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. So my number 3 is Trevor Harris, quarterback of your Saskatchewan Roughriders. Are you on the same page before I break down?
No, I mean, look, I know I called him a pumpkin, but...
No, you call Vernon Adams a pumpkin.
I can't throw Vernon Adams down below 3rd.
So you've got Vernon Adams 3rd.
I do.
Okay, so let me talk about Harris first.
All right, you talk about your Trevor Harris.
All right, and then you talk about Adams. So Trevor Harris, his numbers are good. They're not fantastic, but I think some of those are misleading too. In watching his games, he's made some really sharp decisions, and I don't think people realize the skill players around him, and I'll say the same thing for Fajardo as well. He doesn't have right now all the weapons that we thought he would necessarily have going into the season. It hasn't been like that. It hasn't been like he's just kind of throwing up balls and relying on guys to go make plays. And not saying that Adams has just done that in BC, but obviously Adams has probably the best weapons in the league around him. Harris has played some really good football, and he's been injured while doing it. The fact that he went into that Winnipeg game not even knowing if he was going to be able to play because of the injury, not just one injury, because multiple injuries he'd sustained from getting body slammed into the ground on the last play of the game. And he went out and threw for like 400 yards, and he's just looked against tough competition. He's had a tough go of things. It's been a dogfight for him each week. And he's put up really good numbers. He's got 5 passing touchdowns, 3 picks. You'd like that to be a little lower, but there's the guy that you've got number 3 has got 8. So
Well, yeah, he did get lit on fire one game.
So talk about Vernon Adams as your 3, and I like Vernon. But
he's got 4. He's got 4 games under his, so his stats are a little higher than some because he's got the 4 games. But look, he's thrown for he is in the top categories for yards thrown for offensive touchdowns. He is really good at escaping the pocket when people are closing down on him. He is right there with it's Caleros, Kelly, and Adams for touchdown drives. Those guys are by far the leaders, with Kelly leading the way at 26, and then Caleros at 22, and then Adams at 18. So I have him ahead of Trevor Harris. I think that just in every statistical way, he's a better quarterback. The interceptions, that 1 interception game for sure. I mean, that knocked him off the top 2. But for me, I could not. Would you trade Trevor Harris for Vernon Adams?
I would take Trevor Harris over Vernon Adams. Yeah, I would. I like Trevor Harris.
So do I. I have him next.
I have
a tier change after that. To me, I think that Adams has shown in the first 3 games that he is putting up elite numbers, and Toronto, really kind of took him to school. So let's see if he can recover for that. But I'm not going to eliminate those first 3 games where he was elite and Trevor Harris was just never better than fine.
When I filled out my top 50 ballot for this season for TSN's top 50 players coming into the CFL season, Zach Collaros and Trevor Harris were the only 2 quarterbacks I had in my top 50 players. And I would now, if I were doing it now, having seen some more evidence, I couldn't justify putting Chad Kelly on there. I hadn't seen him play enough. There was, that didn't make any sense. Now I would consider putting Chad Kelly in there. I think I would also have Fajardo and Adams in that conversation based on their play too. We can get to those guys.
Yeah, I had Harris and Fajardo fighting each other for a spot, not Adams. I had Adams pretty safely at 3rd.
But I do like Trevor Harris. I think he's a really good quarterback. He hasn't done anything to dissuade me from believing he's a top 50 CFL player.
He's perfectly fine. That's where 4th goes.
All right, so he's your 4th. So where am I here? So my 4th is Cody Fajardo, who, and the reason I have Fajardo,
you have Adams below 4th?
I do. I have Adams 5th. I'll get there. We'll get there easy.
Oh my God.
Adams is a fine quarterback. I like Vernon Adams. I think
carry on.
I think he's a winning quarterback. I think he's a good CFL quarterback. I think he has a very good football team he plays for. I think a lot of his success, and this is not a knock against him, but it's just, you look at the difference in the weapons that Fajardo has and the weapons that Vernon Adams has. Fajardo, and I know efficiency rating doesn't mean everything, but Fajardo coming in at 109 and Adams coming in at 95, that's a big gap. And look at who Fajardo has to work with. He's doing the offense all on his own. It's not like Montreal has like a dominating rushing attack right now. We thought they might. They haven't really. And
I like my quarterbacks to need more than one hand when they're counting touchdowns.
Yeah. So it for me, I know 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's played safe, but he's played smart football. He's made good decisions. He has made Mac look like a star. He just hasn't had much in the way of guys to throw to. So I think he's playing great football right now. He's my number 4. Wow. And then I have Vernon Adams at 5. So who is your number 5? That's Fajardo?
No, my number 5 is Mazzoli.
You don't even have Fajardo at 5, the top efficiency ranked quarterback.
No, I don't have any
now?
time for efficiency.
All right.
Winnipeg just shut him out.
Yeah.
No, my number 5 is Mazzoli. I think that he is the 5th best quarterback in the league right now. And like I talked about, his last 4 games are identical to Collaros's, percentage yards. The only difference is Collaros has a few more touchdowns, but he's playing for a better team than Mazzoli was. I like Mazzoli. I think that he has a ceiling that is higher than Fajardo. I think Fajardo's fine. I think he's perfectly fine quarterback, and he's playing like a perfectly fine quarterback. But I don't see him being somebody who I would, build behind or offer a contract pass this year. I wouldn't make him the face of my team. I think he's doing fine. But for me, I have Mazzoli in after Harris and then Fajardo.
So just to completely deflate your argument, you have a knock against Cody Fajardo because he wasn't able to score points last week against Winnipeg. Our number 1 quarterback only managed 2 field goals against the BC Lions just a week ago. So it can't, sometimes guys have bad games, and Fajardo still put up good numbers. He didn't score points. It's true.
I need Fajardo's other games to be better. All right. Like that to me is where it comes down to, is like, Fajardo doesn't have other games to hang his hat on to go along with the shutout, where for me, Collaros and Adams definitely do have highlight games. Even Harris can point to something where Fajardo can point to being better than whatever comes after 6.
And so your 6th is Cody Fajardo?
Yes.
And my 6th is Jeremiah Masoli. And I will say Masoli could move up. I want to see him. We haven't seen him play football in a year. We're going to get to see him very soon. We're talking about, a matter of, we're into hours now, I guess. So that's exciting. But The idea that he could move up wouldn't at all surprise me. I actually expect him to play quite well for Ottawa, so we'll see how that goes.
I like to rank my quarterbacks by who I would trade.
Yeah, that's a fair way to do it. I actually like that. That's a philosophy.
Would I trade Cody Fajardo for Mazzoli? No, sir, I would not. So, would I trade Harris for Mazzoli? Yes, I would.
It's a good way of looking at it. You often talk about when you're looking at a team, if we release this guy right now, would teams battle to pick him up? And
yeah, that's always my line with the coach.
Yeah.
Like, if you fired the coach, would anybody hire him? If the answer is no, you should fire that coach.
Yeah. I think it's a great way of looking at it.
Your coach should be wanted by other teams.
I can't argue with that. All right. Who is your number 7 QB?
Now we're getting into the fans and random Bo Levi, Cornelius, Adams, Arbuckle, as I like to call him. So I don't actually consider any of these people after. To me, the edge of the empire is Fajardo, and after that is just wasteland and the occasional roving gang.
So that's it. There's just 6 quarterbacks. There's 6 good quarterbacks in the CFL.
Yes.
Everyone else is just bring them
and
through.
If you don't believe me, I got Coach Jones on the line for you.
Yeah.
Also, Ottawa would like to talk to you.
All right. Well, I will finish out my list, but I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on it. But
well, it's good. It's like a little it's like a little post-apocalyptic trip. I'm curious where you go.
Well, I've got Jake Mayer next. Then I've got
actually that's fair. He's right on the border. I wouldn't let him in, but he's knocking on the wall.
I've got Dane Evans after that, which is interesting to me because he's not starting, but I think he's a good quarterback, and so I have him in 8.
Yeah, that was unfair. Mayer is right there on the edge. I agree with you. It drops off after Mayer.
Yeah, and I agree. So I got Dane Evans, then Bo Levi Mitchell, who I really thought might have a chance to rebound, but I just don't see that happening now. And then Taylor Cornelius is my 10th. And I think Taylor Cornelius may actually have a good week this week. So be warned, Saskatchewan. I think you might get a very solid game from Cornelius after being benched last week for Daggy. All right, that rounds up our quarterbacks. Let's move into our power rankings, JB. And this time, I hope you didn't just rank your top 5 and then give up after that because there are no teams.
I have followed all the teams this time.
Okay, so let's go down. Let's count down this time from 9 till 1, and we can go through this fairly quickly. I don't think there's a need to drag this section out. But are we in agreement that Edmonton is at number 9?
Yes, number 9 with a bullet.
Yeah, I don't think,
I
don't think we even need to say anything about that.
No, they are the bottom.
For me, Hamilton is number 8.
Yes, Hamilton is. I don't know. I don't like. Are they going to get healthy? They have so many holes in that boat right now. I know it's the CFL, but the East is stronger this year. I think Hamilton's done.
I thought the East was stronger this year. It's weird though. Like I still think it is, but
I think it's coming. Well, we'll see. I'll tell you who I think is coming.
I thought Hamilton, like the last time we did power rankings was preseason. Like we don't do them every week. We do them like 3 times a year. But I had Hamilton, I think, as 3 in preseason rankings. I thought they were going to be good on paper, and then their O-line got decimated. Bo Levi Mitchell got hurt and really didn't look himself anyway, whatever himself is.
Oh, I should have written down. We should have written down what my
your power rankings were. Well, fortunately, you can go back and listen to what your power rankings were. So
I guess I could have done that prior to us recording. Okay, carry on.
So Hamilton at number 8. Who's your number 7?
My number 7 is Calgary.
So my number 7 is Ottawa, and I will say, Ottawa with Masoli may be a whole different animal. So we'll have to see how that goes this week. But I just can't put them like I don't know, watching them play Montreal, and I don't know. I know that was the opener, and they've gone all over the place with quarterbacks. Quarterbacks so huge in the CFL. If Masoli looks good, I'm willing to move Ottawa up in a hurry. But right now, I've got them at number 7, and your number 7 is Calgary. I've got Calgary at 6. Who's your 6?
My 6 is Montreal.
Yeah, and that's not far off for me. I've got Montreal at 5. I think they started off 2-0, but again, you kind of have to look at who you play.
I just think they are who they are. I think that like people thought they were going to be really terrible this year. They have too much coaching smarts for that to be the case. But I think we've seen who they are. I think they're probably, an 8-win team. Probably who they are, 8 or 9 wins. So I think they're fine, but I don't have them. It's kind of they're on that tier with Calgary.
And I had them in the basement in my initial power rankings, but they're obviously much better than that. But yeah, after starting 2-0, they're coming back to the pack now. For me, number 5 is Montreal. Who is your number 5?
Yeah, my number 5 is Ottawa.
Okay.
I know, it doesn't make sense when you look head to heads, but Ottawa's defense, and I know they haven't played world beaters, but Ottawa's defense has been absolutely elite across the board statistically with, essentially zero quarterback play. They are almost dead last in every offensive quarterback measurable. And so if you can turn those offensive numbers into middle of the pack, which I think is a very reasonable guess for Mazzoli, and you're able to maintain that level of elite defense and elite special teams coverage, I mean, their numbers are really, really good. I was really surprised at how many. They're the least penalized team in the league. I think that speaks to the coaching, and that speaks to, and on a flip side, we'll talk about Toronto later, but they're the least penalized. They are fantastic at covering punts, fantastic at covering kicks. They're good at stopping the run. They're good at stopping the pass. You plug a quarterback in there, and I think you've got something. I think you've got a real team there.
So while the order isn't all the same, we've got the same 5 teams in the bottom 5 and the same 4 teams in the top 4. Yes. So let's see how that breaks down. I've got Saskatchewan as my number 4.
Yep, Saskatchewan at 4. I think that could be Ottawa. I don't want to get too excited about Ottawa, but yeah, right now I have Saskatchewan at 4.
And they're going to have some pieces coming back soon too. Like they might get hot as well. They could be like sort of the Ottawa of the West, and really give some teams some problems. Number 3 is probably where we're going to split here. I've got Winnipeg as number 3.
Yes, and I have BC at 3. The same way you oddly have Trash Vernon Adams. I think that BC is good, but much like my trade, if Winnipeg played BC, would I take BC? No, I would not.
They just played, and BC won by a lot.
I understand. I understand they did, but Montreal beat Winnipeg last year too.
Yeah, I know, but oh, come on. It's recent, like last week.
I know, but then BC went and lit themselves on fire against Toronto. So I'm going to cancel those 2 out, and then with the 3 remaining games, I'm going to take Winnipeg.
To correct you, Toronto lit BC on fire. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I just think, and I know you and I have had this discussion before, like the power rankings can't just be, here are the standings. And I agree with that. But I also have trouble not looking at head-to-head matchups, just like I wouldn't be able to put BC ahead of Toronto. If
Winnipeg hadn't come out and just sort of been dominant against Montreal, I feel like, they came back out and were like, no, let's not get things twisted here.
That's fair. I think they're really close. I do think the top 3 teams are all right there with each other.
And if BC at home and BC adding, if they can get that wide receiver room and the running back healthy, they could be a massive problem for anybody at any time.
Yeah, and for me, BC at number 2, I think they've got so many pieces. Like, they don't really have a positional weakness, much like Toronto. I think Vernon Adams is a good quarterback. I think he's got weapons. If Lucky Whitehead comes back, that receiving core, it's already deadly. But you've got Rhymes, who is top 2 quarterback, or top 2 receivers in the league, maybe the best. And when Meisel's healthy, he looks great too. I don't think he was at 100% playing against Toronto. So yeah, I think they're number 2 for me. And you've got Winnipeg as your number 2, which again, I can't really argue with. They're all sort of the same. And then we got the Argonauts at number 1, who I just think are playing the best football right now. They've got the best defense in the league. They've got what looks like the most reliable offense in the league, and the special teams last week finally started coming together.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we had Toronto Winnipeg 1-2 in our preseason. Yeah, I think so. Now, will it be easy for Toronto to beat Winnipeg? No, but as of right now, yeah, I think Toronto is the best team, but the next month is going to be tough because they're going to go on the road, and they're going to have going to Montreal is never easy. Flying out east and playing Saskatchewan will not be easy. Flying to Calgary, ugh, oh God, Calgary. So yeah, those are it may look very different when we do our Week 9 power ranking, but right now you can't deny Toronto being the best.
JB, it is time for Put Me Down for 20. And before we get into Put Me Down for 20, while gambling can be a fun way to enhance your sports viewing experience, it's important to do so responsibly. Set a budget, never bet more than you're happy to lose. And if you or anyone you know develops a problem with gambling, you can always call the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline, 1-888-230-3505. And folks, we're just doing this for fun too. You should never really take our advice to heart.
No.
We're just playing around and providing some entertainment. So keep that in mind as you are making your bets. So JB, last week I had a good week. You did not have a good week.
I had it in my hands,
you did.
And then it turned to sand.
You did have it.
The better's prayer.
Well, JB's swings for the fences. I'm a little bit more smaller play consistent because you had a huge one hit the week before, but yeah, it just wasn't to be for this week.
And what happened was I went with the more conservative pick. I had the parlay, I had the cover 2.5 and win with the over, and I was in on it, and then I got cold feet and thought that was a little too bold and went with a slightly different one, and nonetheless.
Yeah, if you think a horse is going to win and at the gate you change to another horse, I can guarantee you which horse is going to win.
All right, so what do we got here? So for my picks, moving on, swinging for the fences big here again.
Well, before we get there, so we started with 200 golden fleeces. So JB still has 184 golden fleeces. I'm at 247 and change. And we don't have an Argos bet this week, so we've got 20 golden fleeces to place on 2 bets of our choice.
You're living that grind life.
Yeah. So what do you have, JB?
I have so for plus 470, Dominique Rhymes first touchdown for BC.
Yeah, I like that number too.
We got up close and personal view of it the other day. He is very, very hard to cover. And when you have BC, maybe if Whitehead's back, you can't cover him one-on-one. And, he just absolutely ran a perfect corner against Toronto. So they're looking for him. He's an elite receiver. I like him to score the first touchdown for BC at home.
He's so tough near the end zone too. He's just got that height. Like, you don't realize how tall he is until you see him stand next to some of those Argos DBs. You're like, wow, that guy's because he doesn't move like a tall receiver. He moves like a smaller guy. And that's what makes him so elite.
He is the problem. My second one is going along with my rebirth of Ottawa. I love Mazzoli heading into Hamilton. I have the Red Blacks to win, and because I'm not a sharp, I will bang that over. So it's Red Blacks to win with the over at plus 280. Because only a boring sharp cheers for the under.
I like unders, but I don't have any unders in my picks this week. So
sir. I will never bet an under.
You've got 10 golden fleeces on both of those.
Yes, please.
I will put out 10 golden fleeces on both of my bets too. So the first one is I've got Trey Odom's Dukes with under 63.5 yards receiving. The reason for that one, looking at Calgary's lineup this week, he's going to be playing in the boundary slot, and he's going to have to go up against Dietrich Nichols a lot for Winnipeg. I love Dietrich Nichols. I think he's the best DB in the CFL.
Well, Nichols is an interesting name to choose since you seem to love playing the nickel slots here.
Yeah.
I'll be at the table if you need me.
Right. So that's my Nichols slots play for this week is 10 golden fleeces on Tradom's Dukes under 63.5 yards receiving. That's at minus 114 for the juice. So I don't like that number
there's nothing
juice,
more exciting than cheering for an under. Get a cold,
I
refreshing
agree,
beverage.
but that number is high. Going against Nichols doesn't allow any
bad passes. No, I agree. I mean, I can see the juice it would add to watching
cheering
the game.
for defense, cheering for good defense, good defensive play. And my second bet is a parlay. I've got Ottawa on the money line, and I'm going to parlay that with Winnipeg minus 7.5. That's a big line, but I think Winnipeg might blow the doors off Calgary. That comes in at plus 310 for me. That's where my other 10 golden fleeces are going. All right, JB, it's time for our CFL picks. You swept the board last week after a bit of a dreadful week 3. Your week 4 was a perfect 3-0. I was 2-1 last week, so that has us both at 9-6 on the season. Let's get into it for this week. So Edmonton at Saskatchewan, that game is tonight. That game is in a matter of a few hours. So where are you going for that one?
Well, it'll be a cold day in the Empire before I put anything down on the Elks of Edmonton again. So I am not choosing them. I think that there's going to be I think that you're looking at a nice Saskatchewan home win.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually think it's going to be tight though. I think Saskatchewan wins. I think their spread is huge. They're like 7.5 or 8 too.
Maybe. Here's what I'm going to tell you might be in play. We might be at the end of the Jones era. He's taken some big swings and quarterbacks have been cut, and that goes one of two ways. Team coalesces around the new direction, or the team says, F that. So we're going to see really quick. If this game gets out of hand, I think that's it for Jones.
My prediction is with 5 minutes remaining in the game, Edmonton will be winning, but Saskatchewan will win the game.
Wow.
Yeah, I think so. I think Cornelius is going to play the best game he's played as a pro. I think Cornelius is going to have about 70 yards rushing as well. And that's something that he lost from his game in his starts this season. So that's my thought on this. We're 4 hours from kickoff.
I see it like 21-3 at the half. And then the TSN crew is like, who coaches Edmonton next? That's where I see it going.
All right, we'll see. Then we got tomorrow's game, Calgary at Winnipeg. I've already said I think Winnipeg's going to just pound Calgary in this. I think it would be like that no matter who they were up against right now. Winnipeg's in machine mode. They've just turned on their level of focus after losing to BC. I think they're going to put together a few straight weeks of just pounding one team after another. I think they beat Calgary pretty handily. Yeah,
me too. Unfortunately, we'd like to have more debates here, but
it is what it is. Yeah.
I like all the home favorites. I think Winnipeg is back on track. I think BC probably the worst thing they could have done for the league. I think Winnipeg comes home and takes care of Calgary. They are an enigma. I have not been able to figure out what the heck to do with Calgary. So I'm very curious to watch this game actually, but I like Winnipeg.
They do play well coming off the bye, and that's one thing that you never know. Like, what did coach come up with during the bye week? But I just think Winnipeg's playing good football right now.
Yeah. I don't know I really don't know what to make of Calgary, and have not I didn't know in the preseason. I don't know now. So carry on.
Saturday's game, Ottawa at Hamilton. This has the potential to be the best, or at least the closest game of the weekend. I've got Ottawa in this because it's the Jeremiah Masoli revenge game, and I haven't seen much from Hamilton yet.
No, love it. Hamilton is too injured. I don't know how they piece that thing together. I think Masoli's going to love coming in and torching them. I think Ottawa is ready to shift into another gear, and this is probably a dagger game for Hamilton, because I don't think less than 9 wins gets you in the playoffs, and it's going to be really hard to get. It's getting increasingly hard for Hamilton to see the way to 9 wins.
They've got to win this week. They have to win. I just don't think they're going to. And I think
they have to play Toronto like 8 more times.
I know that's also going to be a problem. But I think Ottawa wins this week.
No, I love
that
it.
should be Ottawa, a good game.
But this will be, for me, this will tell me a lot about Ottawa, because Hamilton is, Hamilton, Ottawa, Montreal. Those are the 3 teams kind of fighting it out. Can you put the dagger in your opponent? And that'll show me that Ottawa is for real.
And then the last game of the week, Montreal at BC. I like BC against any East team having to travel all the way out there 3 hours into the past. So I'm going to take the BC Lions. But I think this will be close too. I think Montreal is better than everyone thought. I think BC is better, and they're at home, so BC wins.
Yeah, I like BC at home. I think they're, potentially Whitehead comes back. They're very good at home. They just got embarrassed on TV. They will not be a fun team to play. Montreal definitely pulled the short straw on the cross country trip. I like BC pretty big. We'll see if your guy Fajardo can whip up more than 14 points.
And just to sort of wrap up this, we don't have a fantasy.
Well, it's kind of the Grant Bowl in a sense. You have Adams versus Fajardo. I guess this will be a nice little
to see who's better.
Yeah,
it'll be nice. Pieces little, they're working with pieces. All right.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
So we'll just add in our fantasy thought to this segment. We're not going to go through our fantasy picks. We've done away with that for this season. But we are in our podcast, the X and Argos podcast, is in a CFL podcast fantasy league as we were last year. We are right now at the top of the standings with the second most points scored. And we've got a matchup this week with the guys from Argos Fancast. So a lot on the line. Argos aren't even playing. So we're really going to have to dive into it. We're not going to go through specific players, but
should we not keep this a secret? Do we want to give away?
Well,
our
we will.
Picks?
We'll
keep
have
they locked in?
No. Well, they'll change. Who knows what they're doing? But they talked about some stuff yesterday on their pod, but they never fully lock in. But strategy wise, where do you think most of the CFL points are coming for? You look at these games. Where? Yeah,
I like the BC game. I like the Winnipeg game.
Yeah, me too.
I think there's going to be big scores this week. I like the Saskatchewan game.
Yeah,
I think there are teams that are going to pump other teams. I think this is a big score weekend.
I don't think we should take anyone from Montreal. I don't think we should take anyone from Hamilton. But I think everyone else. I think there's some options there.
I don't even know who'd you take from Hamilton.
I wouldn't. That's the thing. I just cross it
Jake
off.
Burt, number 1 pick, tight end specialist.
Well, I think that will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. I hope you are enjoying the bye week. Argos back at it next week. We will get you set with our pregame walkthrough coming to you midway next week. Enjoy the games this weekend. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the